Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's podcast. I'm Chloe Tetram, the health coach here with Ready Care. It's a pretty grey morning here in Cork, so I'll try brighten it up a little bit. For this morning, guys, what I will be chatting to you about is making or breaking habits, which is something that can come up quite a bit in feedback and in what people generally seek to really get a good handle on when they're undertaking a change in positive health lifestyle changes. So making or breaking habits is kind of the fundamental when we are looking to move from the current state that we're in to a more desired state, which would be kind of the crux of any type of change. So how do habits form in the first place? So there is a popular little phrase called Hebb's Law, which goes, neurons that fire together wire together. So when we begin our life as little babas, we have 80 billion different synapses in our brain. We have a huge amount, and our brains doesn't differentiate between what's important or not important yet. So what we start to do throughout our life is the information that's most relevant gets wired into this circuitry, and the information that may not be so relevant just kind of gets cut away. So we start to lose some of those synapses as we get older. The ones that we utilize the most and have the most meaning attached to them are the ones that strengthen. So the act of thinking of something and engaging on a particular topic sends a signal through the neurons of the brain, through this kind of network. And the more utilized that is, the more often we repeat that, the more solidified it becomes. Now, the solidification process actually happens at a physiological level where there is a protein called the myelin sheath, which will wrap around specific circuitry to make it much easier and quicker to get to specific thought processes. So that's a really great thing, because not all information in our lives is pertinent. Not all things have whether it be physiological, emotional, or survival instinct, not all things matter that much. So it's a really good way that we've evolved to cut away some of the dross information. There's so much information that our brains take in all the time that it has to begin to filter it. So in those specific pathways, that's where our behaviors start to be influenced. So you might notice, even just taking a quick snapshot of your own life, we tend to repeat the same types of thoughts, the same types of states of being can be quite similar from day to day. What happens there is just that thing of what we've taught our brain is the place that we want to access the quickest. It's making the easiest for us to go. Now, behaviorally speaking, that can present with things like brushing your teeth in the morning, or a bad habit that I have, mea culpa, is waking up in the morning and checking my phone. It's become a total somatic corporal habit that it's like second nature. I just do it, which I know I'm not advocating anyone to do that. But it starts to present in specific behaviors that we repeat throughout our lives. Some of it is positive, some of it not as positive. But the brilliant thing about the brain is that previously it was thought that once you get to a specific age, it kind of solidifies. Let's say that, you get to maybe not quite 18, but around the 20 mark, and toof, you're done. That's you sorted for the rest of your life. Which isn't the case at all. And you can see that when people have had different types of injuries, brain injuries, that things can be retrained and behaviors can absolutely change. Why it becomes more difficult is that the physical pathways of the brain have been really tended to over the years to make your current want to go there. It's trying to help you by energy conservation, which is where a lot of the pitfalls of the old brain will come in as well. Well, not at the brain per se, it's just its mechanism. So we have a finite amount of energy in our system, and your brain is trying to conserve that energy at all costs. So it is going to not want to create new pathways, because if you think of having built this kind of road, right, and the road used to be a path, then it was a paneled road, and then it was a highway. So those are your neurons, those are your synaptic pathways, those are your habits that you've formed. And it's very, very easy to get in the car of your brain and just zone out going on this straight road. Now, if you were to form an altogether new pathway, you got to take the plans out, you got to look for alternative routes, you got to start digging, and that your brain will start to go, we don't like that uses way too much energy, we're not into that, let's just stick to what we know and stick to what we're good at. But there is absolutely, it's through a process called neuroplasticity, so brain plasticity, so something that can be moved. All of that can be retrained. It does require a certain amount of energy, especially at the start. So if you are trying to make a change, don't be hard on yourself if you go, gee, because this is really hard, because you are wired to find it difficult. You are wired at an evolutionary level. It would be almost strange if it wasn't hard to start a new habit. So what you want to do really as well is you want to leverage the fact that energy is a big part of how you create change. So I'm taking it way back here and looking at the fundamentals of how do we energize ourselves. Really, really easy stuff. Back to basics is make sure that you're not exhausted. Make sure you've eaten properly. Make sure that your stress levels, up to a manageable amount, are not all over the place, because all of that takes brain power in the literal sense and can drain you of your energy somewhat. So really, you want to give yourself the best fighting chance at creating that new pathway, that new behavior, that change away from the current state that you're in to your desired state. And you want to really be giving yourself as much energy as possible, while remembering that this is difficult. It's difficult. It feels like a strain. It feels like, oh, why can't it just be easy? So use the force, look. I think I'm very funny sometimes, lads. I'm sorry about this. So basically what you want to be doing as well with that, because there is an amount of energy being used, you want to leverage the mechanisms of your brain as much as possible. So the motivation drive, and we all hear about motivation when it comes to brain training changes, etc. Motivation, I think, is a little bit misunderstood sometimes. Motivation can be a positive move towards something, but altogether it can be a dynamic move away from something. Motivation is just that force of, am I going towards the thing or away from the thing? And if you find yourself really struggling in the past with a specific behavior that you're looking to change, and you have a felt sense that you're quite repelled by it, like a very easy example is exercise. Most people have equated exercise with something, for whatever reason, that they're looking to avoid. And most of the time that comes from the motivational drive to protect yourself from things that you find uncomfortable, challenging, and could bring up specific emotions like fear, shame, not feeling good enough. So your brain is very clever and harnesses all of that motivational energy to get you away from it. But really, a good way to fortify those pathways when you're looking to make that change is to anchor the change to a positive motivation that you have. And your emotions are some of the things that will drive behavior the most out of anything else. So think about a time that you've been angry and how that can drive a behavior. Think of the times that you've been happy, and the same scenario can elicit very, very different outcomes based on the emotional charge that's associated with it. So when you're looking to make that change, have a quick think and a quick look, really honestly, because it has to be honest, you can't fool your own brain, as to what emotional drivers can be found in the action that will elicit that pull towards. Now, a good tip for this is, if you've ever done a values-based exercise, it's basically finding out what is most important to you in your life. And I list my examples, which is freedom, family, love, and let's say humor, which you wouldn't know by my headings, but look at. So when I struggle to make a change in a specific behavior, a really easy way to utilize the emotional driver force of something is to link that behavior to those core fundamental things that are important to me and say, how will this new behavior create more freedom for me? So already all of the different neurotransmitters in there that are going to help to solidify that new pathway are starting to work and go, ooh, a little bit of dopamine. That's a good forward motion driver. Ooh, little bit of endorphins coming in, and the endorphins basically mean that you enjoy the task. So suddenly the task is no longer this thing that your threat system gets peaked at and say, no, we're trying to avoid that. What you're doing is you're reconnecting the association with something that you really, really want to move towards. So harnessing the power of the emotions and the values and things that are intrinsically attractive to you, and have a look at how they can be placed on your new behavior. So the next one there is to be or not to be. And basically this looks at the newer, most recent literature around neuropsychology of change, and where we may have placed. Now there's a two-way system with this. So doing the action in small incremental parts throughout your day will start to make it easier to do it, because we're repeating that particular action over and over. But actually, to feel like you are the sort of person that does this action, so that could be eating healthy. If you feel that you're the type of person that eats healthy, and you have associated that with who you are as a person, it's going to be a lot easier for you to start to act from that place, because our brain likes to really protect our sense of identity. So I see this when there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance with people that want to do something like jogging. And they'll say, oh, I'm not the type of person that jogs. Like, I've never been that person. And they continuously tell themselves that story. So your brain operates on the data that you feed it. And if you continuously tell it, I am not the person, I'm not the type of person who does X, Y, Z, it's going to limit your behaviors associated with creating that habit. Now, sometimes people can absolutely just power through. They can just go, oh, I'm after setting 5 minutes aside, I'm going 10 minutes. I don't know how long is a jog supposed to be. I'm exposing myself here. They're going to say to themselves, no, I've blocked out three parts of the week, half an hour to go for my jog. Now that might work with sheer brute force in the beginning stages, but it's going to become exceedingly difficult, especially if there are specific challenges that come up, like a rainy day or not feeling particularly good that day. It becomes more difficult if we continuously feed ourselves the information that we are not the type of person that does X, Y, Z. A better way to harness that, again, is to be open to the fact that you can become that person. So people talk about adaptive learning. They talk about that kind of change state, not having a fixed mindset. With that, what you're actually doing, you're not just telling yourself a fantasy of, I could be this athlete in the future. But what you're actually doing is, if you remember back on the very, very narrowed enforced pathways that the brain has had and held for X amount of years, sometimes decades, what you're doing is you're starting to energize different pathways of this. The more you visualize something, the more you start to create new pathways of this is a possibility. So you're firing bits of energy to that particular part of your brain that's creating new pathways. So it becomes easier to take in some of the behaviors of it. A very quick exercise with that is just imagining, what would it be like if I were the type of person that did go for a jog every day? And this is before you ever leave, but give yourself license to have fun and be curious with this and really sit into it. So think about, what would I feel like? How would my day be different? What would my emotions be like? How would I feel like physically, psychologically? So you're starting to think about all these different things. You're creating energy to new pathways. You're also intrinsically starting that process we spoke about of utilizing positive attractor emotions, because most of the time when we imagine what our lives could be like if we implement the change that we wanted to make, it tends to have quite a positive charge, positive emotions, floods of dopamine that will start you in that direction that you want to be going. The main thing with habits, as we've had a look, they form through repetition. They have formed throughout your life because it's a specific action that's been repeated over and over. There is in that the knowledge that it's not set in stone forever. And the more that you repeat your new behavior, the more it's going to be ingrained at a physiological level as something that you are capable of doing, you're getting your intrinsic reward from, and you're seeing day by day the capability of doing it. The more ingrained it becomes, and I'm repeating myself, I can hear myself repeating this point as well, is the more we repeat something, the more ingrained it becomes. People will say it when they're doing the likes of sales and trying to close deals. They'll say, repeat your main point, the main selling point, different ways throughout the presentation or throughout the sale. And again, recapitulate at the end part of the sale. So the more the repetition of the action goes in, the more we're inclined to believe that we are that person, the more we're inclined to find positive emotional attributes with it, the more we're getting the dopamine reward. So if you think back on rituals, times gone by or in different parts of the world, the point of the repetitive action is to start to mesh with the action that is being repeated. And that's really a kind of an anthropological look at, what we're creating at a much more daily rate of our habits. Our habits and what we repeat every day is who we are, who we become. But there are absolutely ways to create new ones that are more in line with what it is that you want to become, let's say. So in summary, we start our lives with lots of possibility. And as we go on, we narrow our field and we break away some of our synapses and fortify the ones that we feel bring us, that are the most useful to us. So they can be very useful at the beginning stages of our life, but as we develop, some of those pathways that we repeat over and over and over can become an obstruction to a state that we want to inhabit in our later years, or if we want to make a change. It can become more difficult as we repeat these patterns and as they become fortified to create that initial change because of the level of physiological energy and psychological energy that initial breakaway will give. So don't worry, it's very, very normal to find something difficult. It's very normal to find a change difficult. Utilizing positive emotional attractors and attaching things that are intrinsically important to you to the task will make it easier to go towards the task and get the dopamine rewards and the endorphin rewards that'll help to keep you positively motivated towards it. Telling yourself that, first of all, not telling yourself that you're not the type of person who does X, Y, and Y, or X, Y, and Z. Things like, I'm not the type of person who eats healthy. Getting rid of all of that type of language and actually opening yourself up to the possibility of, maybe I am the type of person who eats healthy. I'm doing it every day. I did it 3 days in a row. I am the type of person that eats healthily. It's going to make implementation of that habit a lot easier throughout your day. And repeating it. Don't worry if you falter. Don't worry if you have a day that doesn't. And best of luck with it. It's a very natural part of the human system, and it's a very exciting change to be going towards. So all the best with it. Hope you found this helpful. And we will chat to you again next week. Bye now.